So one day while I was working with my friend Max, we met a new hire and got to talking. Somehow the subject got around to cosplay and we started listing characters off that we used to cosplay. The subject got to how me and said new hire, we'll call her Danny, used to cosplay Kingdom Hearts. "Oh!" Max says, "Are you a lesbian?" Danny laughs out loud and says, "Bisexual, but close enough." And I'm like, "Max, you can't just ask somebody if they're a lesbian. Why did you ask her that?" And he tells me he had a large group of female friends in high school that all collectively got into Kingdom Hearts, got really into Yaoi, and all came out the other end at least a little gay. And I blinked. Gaily. Because I too was a female who got into the hell that was Kingdom Hearts Yaoi, coming out the other end with not a straight bone in me. I said, my voice dripping with homosexuality. Why is that? Kingdom Hearts is a game that almost everyone's heard of. It came out in early 2000s when I was the tender, impressionable age of a single decade. With inspirations pulled from Mario 64, it's a colorful romp through childhood favorites in the Disney universe, and was highly successful. I mean, the game was alright, but it wasn't gay propaganda hypnotizing kids to turn into homosexuals. Far from it. It was riddled with pretty boys and expressive animation, and was just that, really. As far as the sequel went, there was a definite tonal shift. Rating went from E to E10+, ooh boy! Instead of putting all the focus on stringing together all these different Disney universes, there was more focus put on the... Oh, boy. Yeah, there was more focus put on these guys, the hot guys in the black cloaks. And this game came out 3 years after the first game, so 10-year-old me was now 13. And fire was brewing in these loins, let me tell you. These guys were hot. But Spoonie, isn't that defeating the purpose of this video? I thought you were saying it turned people gay, and if they're girls liking guys, they're straight. We'll get there. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Because as luck would have it, another thing was becoming popular as KH2 was also becoming popular. And it sure fanned the fiery loins of these young folk. That's right. I'm talking about Yaoi. To give you a little introduction to what Yaoi is, it stands for Yamete o Shirigaite, which means stop that, my ass hurts. Yeah, Yaoi was introduced in Japan in the late 1970s and didn't really blow up in the West until the early 2000s. It's a genre of manga and anime written by women, for women, and it's essentially toxic heterosexual tropes under the guise of homosexuality. It's just straight people things with gay people's skin. It's the fetishization of gay people, essentially, and it is absolutely plagued with toxic, awful tropes, such as power play, sexual abuse, straight up rape, and you know, good old pedophilia. Oof, good stuff. Oh god. Now, seeing as the media didn't really have a whole lot of positive representation of the LGBT community at the time, and if it did, they either died or they didn't get past the censors.
We're cousins. We grew up together.
Huh?
We've been inseparable since we were born. We can almost read each other's minds.
Like best friends?
Yaoi was our only real exposure to gay media, and it was new and exciting and hot. And because we were quite possibly the first generation of young teenagers who had regular access to the internet, we looked up stuff, and we watered, fertilized, and put that stuff out in the sun. This stuff grew like an invasive species. Now, this big Yaoi boom started around 2005, and what, pray tell, was also happening around 2005? Bingo! Grab your inappropriate lube, folks, it's about to get rough! So, as I was saying earlier, a lot of the focus of KH2 was on these young lads, which, you could argue, every single one of them is attractive in some way to someone. Yes, even that one. And it doesn't help that Larxene is just constantly just... Organization 13, or lovingly dubbed the Orgy by the fandom, is an enormous sausage fest in the eyes of fangirls. I remember spending days writing 2 columns of the characters and drawing lines to the other characters just to see what possibilities there were. Nothing was impossible. Absolutely nothing. Demyx could make water clones of himself. Marluxia could make flower clones. Zexion could just make clones of himself. Do you see where I'm going with this? It was an endless fountain of smut ideas for a 14-year-old. And when you're given something like good old Orgy 13, where their biggest plot point is they have no feelings and therefore no personality, it gives the fandom so much room to make their own personalities and project their own feelings onto the characters. Every one of these guys was a pair of pants for the leagues of fangirls to put on and imagine themselves getting slammed by their member of choosing. Not only that, but it gave hundreds of fanfic writers the excuse to write the exchange, but we're nobodies! We don't have emotions! Lust isn't an emotion. Ugh. The tender hormonal age of our generation, the sheer amount of pheromones this game gives off, and the introduction of Yaoi to the West was enough of a recipe for disaster. But what really tipped the scales was one final ingredient, and that is cosplay. Now, if you were a cosplayer at any time between 2005 and 2008, you for sure have battle scars, both mentally and physically. The con scene was a completely different animal back then because it was full of animals. And no, not furries. That's probably going to be a whole different video essay. I'm talking rape culture was at its prime. I'm pretty sure that if you recognize this, then you qualify for a senior discount. But this was the bane of every Sora, L, and Naruto cosplayer's existence. If you went to a convention in this 3-year window of time, you don't just look out for these guys. You downright expect them to smack you square on the ass, and if you were cosplaying as any popular character, you were held down on the ground and pummeled. And it was funny! It was fun! It was exciting! It was just a bunch of horny teenagers being rowdy. Listen, I cosplayed as Sora in 2008. I don't want to talk about it, but I digress. The most important thing about cosplay in this recipe for disaster is that all of these teenage fangirls of Kingdom Hearts started cosplaying as their precious gay babies. Let me paint a few scenarios for you. You've got a really horny teenage girl dressed as her favorite guy from Kingdom Hearts. She runs into another really horny teenage girl dressed as who she ships her character with. She takes a picture with her for fan service, and in that day and age, unwarranted touches were just expected, remember? So girls would kiss other girls for the sake of their ships, not even asking, would grope each other, and then walk away. And realize, oh, I liked that. This scenario was happening in several different iterations all over America and other parts of the world, I'm sure. There were some people who put on their cloaks or poofy pants and ace bandages, please never bind with ace bandages, looked at themselves in the mirror and realized, oh, I like this. And then later down the line, realized they were trans. This wasn't Kingdom Hearts turning people gay, by any means. I know, clickbait, am I right? It was a massive volume of people going through similar experiences together and several of them realizing that they're not straight. And honestly, if the entire world went through something like that, I feel like a lot more people would come to that conclusion. And hey, it wasn't even just the Kingdom Hearts fandom that experienced this massive switch to queerhood. Naruto and Death Note were also huge back then, and like Yaoi, Naruto, you get. Nowadays, gay media is becoming higher in volume. We no longer have to scrape the bottom of the barrel to see ourselves in media. Or better yet, we no longer have to consume high volumes of garbage and jump through so many uncomfortable hoops to finally come to the realization, hey, I'm not straight! We have things like Yuri on Ice, Steven Universe, and several other children's cartoons just normalizing queer relationships out here because that's how they should be treated. Normal. And because of this, queer people can come to that realization sooner. And a lot more painlessly. I hear from a lot of people that Kingdom Hearts was super important to them because it made them realize they were queer. That's fantastic, but the same people get real hung up on how vital Kingdom Hearts was in their journey for self-discovery. They don't remember how toxic the environment was. It's time to move on from sexualizing and fetishizing characters from kids' media. It's time to just make media and consume media that has queer representation already there, and positively. The generations after us shouldn't have to be subjected to the hell we went through to finally figure out how not straight we were.